Hi, Brad Squad. Vanessa Contreras here with Spar and Bernstein, partner and immigration attorney Shannon LaGuerre-Maingrette to discuss a particularly complicated case in which she prevailed and secured two of her clients their green cards. This case involves the practice of female circumcision or female genital mutilation, which, according to a recent report by the United Nations Population Fund, is practiced in 31 countries in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Shannon, what was the situation in this case?
We had a couple that came in 2011 and basically met with Brad. Brad assigned the case to me. And the case basically was for filing an asylum application. The couple had been here since 2001, 2002. It was 2011 then, so it's a late filed asylum application. So just so everyone knows, you usually have 1 year to be able, within the time that you first came in from your first date of entry, to file an asylum application. So we're filing it late, clearly. And the reason why is because the wife is from Guinea. They tried to do the female genital mutilation when she was 3 years old. And then at 5 years old, they tried again with her and her sister. Sister ends up dying. The way that they do it in certain countries is that the entire village brings the girls together and they do almost like a rite of passage. So it's a ceremony, it's a ritual. And so they have all the girls together one by one. They basically perform this female genital mutilation. And for those who don't know, the female genital mutilation is that you are basically taking off, and it depends on what country you're in, depends on the village. You are using anything from a piece of glass to a knife to remove the clitoris, and then they sew you back up. So they do it with young girls as young as this, no anesthesia. I mean, these are in remote villages sometimes that are happening. And so basically, when her sister ended up dying, the whole process ended up stopping for the day. And then her parents at that point were like, you know what, we're not going to do this any longer. And she ends up hiding throughout the country so she doesn't have this done to her, and ultimately comes to the United States where she feels safe and secure, ends up having two daughters with her husband. And her family and also his family is asking for the two daughters to have this female circumcision or female genital mutilation done, because as girls, as part of this tradition, that they should have it done. And at that point, that's why they came in, and we filed the asylum application late, basically stating that there were changed circumstances, and those changed circumstances was the fact that they now had two daughters that were being threatened to have this particular female circumcision done to them.
Can you just share with us culturally, why is this a practice?
The problem is that in a lot of these cultures, if you don't have it done, the woman is subject to rape, okay? They are not marriage material, so they cannot get married if they don't have this done. They almost become less than in their community. It's a rite of passage. It's an honor to have your daughter have this done. And interestingly enough, even though men certainly are like, yes, they should have it done, but women, the older women, are pushing this because they understand how this can affect a girl later on in life. And it's almost like, we want to protect you, so have this done. So culturally, that's why it's done. And a lot of times religiously, women feel that this is what they should do, and in order to protect their virtue. And so at that point, basically, they allude to the fact that it's in the Quran, but in actuality, it's not in the Quran. You have many countries who are trying their best to educate girls and women and men about really the fatalities that have existed, that have emanated from this practice.
Now, even if a girl survives the initial circumcision, what are the long-term health effects?
So many times it's hard to imagine, but hard to urinate, hard to really enjoy sex. When you have your monthly menstruation, it is beyond painful. Physically, things that would be normal to be able to do becomes extremely excruciating pain. And so, yes, those are things that happen. Birth, of course, is difficult.
So now, Shannon, in this case, your client's husband was against his daughters being circumcised.
Correct. The main person was the wife. She was the principal applicant that was submitting the asylum application. Her husband was going to benefit from the asylum application. However, husband also was married before and had daughters before these children that were born in the US. And these daughters also had female genital mutilation performed, and he was against it. But even as the man of the family, even as the head of his household, the village elders held more power than he did. And so although he would say, no, I don't want them to have it done, I've seen what the ramifications are, the village elders still prevailed. He didn't want any other children of his to have it done. And that's why he was so against it when he had these daughters born in the United States.
What type of case did you file in immigration court on behalf of the couple?
When they came in 2011, we filed an I-589, which is an application for asylum, with the asylum office. The asylum office basically had an interview, and at that interview, they did find them credible and consistent in their testimony, but indicated that they did not believe that they met the exception for changed circumstances. Because by the time we filed the application for asylum, their daughters were much older. They were like 9 and 10 years old, if I recall correctly. So they felt that we did not file within that 1 year of them basically being threatened. So they just felt that it was too long. And so they ultimately ended up being referred to immigration court. When we went to immigration court, I then at that point resubmitted the asylum application and said that we are now saying that they need to be protected because their daughters are being forced to come back home to have this performed, and we want to protect the entire family. But I also filed an application for what they call cancellation of removal, which is basically this couple had been here for 10 years. So they've been living in the United States for 10 years. Now they have a notice to appear in immigration court. And we needed to show and demonstrate that the children, the US citizen daughters, would suffer exceptional and extremely unusual hardship if their parents were deported. So 2 applications were submitted to the immigration court.
Shannon, with that being said, what was the court's response?
So at that point, the court accepted both applications, and I indicated that I was going to argue for both relief, really. So they can either A, get the asylum approved, or withholding of removal or convention against torture, but we were aiming for the asylum. We felt that we had met the burden of filing late, that there was a good cause for filing late, and so that we were pushing for the asylum, but also for the cancellation of removal. Most immigrants know it as the 10-year rule, but cancellation of removal is the most difficult way to get the green card in immigration court. So of course, this was in 2012 when we ended up in court. We went to court many times, and we ended up having hearings that were canceled. And as most people know who are in immigration court, let's say they don't have a hearing today, you're not going to get a hearing for another year or 2 sometimes. So again, we didn't go into court to have our case heard until 2019. And so we appeared in court in 2019 and had our case heard. And so much had happened. Can you imagine between 2011 to 2019, Guinea ended up banning the practice of female genital mutilation in 2016. As wonderful as a situation that is, because it's a good thing to ban this with such tremendous heartbreak for so many women and girls. And in 2019, the government attorney went after us and was indicating that, why is this an issue? This is a moot point now. I mean, this doesn't exist in the country. And my argument was that, no, it does exist. Just because the government has basically outlawed it and has said that you will be penalized for it doesn't mean that people are still not doing it, because it's so ingrained in the society. So many people feel like you need to do it. Again, we understand that the government is saying that we can be penalized, but a lot of people were still continuing the practice, especially in these remote villages, which was where my clients were from. And so that was my argument. Also, they were not penalizing people yet. They would give fines, but they were not not jailing people yet or putting them in jail yet. And so it's almost like you get a warning type of situation. And so I was like, listen, you're going to send this family back. There's no other family to take care of these two girls. Do you really want to risk that? So the government attorney was indicating that, hey, we feel that the government is doing what they need to do, and we should allow them to continue to govern the way that they should govern. And there's no reason to protect this family. But my argument is that this still exists. The family is still at risk. And there were other complications. One of the daughters, we ended up filing for another application. That same day I went in 2019, because that daughter, she was in school at a charter school, a specialized type of school, and she ended up being jumped by a group of girls who didn't like Africans and poured bleach on her. And then they recorded it and put it on social media.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so I then at that point had filed for what they call a U visa. And the reason why is because even though it happened to the US citizen daughter, the parents had to suffer and have to basically, deal with the police, cooperate with the police. And there's emotional trauma that exists from seeing that your daughter, they saw the tape. I saw the tape. I cried when I saw the tape. And even the judge indicated that she had a daughter that was around that age. At that point, she was 15. And your heart breaks. It's like, who does this? How cruel and vile is that? And so we actually requested time to be able to get the family, the parents, a U visa. But the government argued against that and basically said that they can be deported back to their country and wait for the U visa, because the U visa takes quite some time. And I was appalled. I was appalled that he had saw the same video that I saw and that the judge saw and was willing for them to still go back. So we had, at this point in 2019, 3 applications before the judge.
Now, you ended up having to go with the daughters for a court-ordered medical exam.
So again, in 2019, and I say this to so many clients, and people who are attorneys probably have the same situation, your clients will always tell you everything. So they failed to mention that their daughters had traveled to London, England to see family there. And the government was able to see that because, of course, you submit documentation. So that question came up. When I asked, have they traveled outside of the country, they did say no. But then when the government attorney asked, interestingly enough, they said yes. And it turned out to be London, England. And so at that point, the government attorney argued that the medical exam that I submitted, they should do another medical exam because my medical exam showed that they had not had this performed on them, which is important. But they wanted us to submit another medical exam. So the judge was also surprised for them to have such fear that the family would be willing to do this to their daughters. Why would they send them to London, England, even though not to Guinea, but to London, England? And I argued, we understand that female genital mutilation happens everywhere. Certainly it happens in the United States, it happens other places. Doctors are doing them and they're not supposed to, but depending on the culture. At that time, the judge basically said, and I think I started court, it was 8:30, and it was at that point maybe 2:30. And the judge indicated that I needed to take both daughters to the doctor. I had to make the appointment right there in court and take them right there and then to the doctor. And I had to wait with them, get the results, and bring it back to court that same day.
After you came back to court with the medical examination reports for the daughters, what was the judge's response then?
So I came in and the judge was on the bench, clearly waiting for me, but there was no government attorneys. And so the judge accepted it, looked at the documents and said that she was going to provide the government attorney a copy, said that she would issue a decision. So the record was closed. At this point, I could submit nothing else. We were just waiting on a decision. So this was in 2019, and we received a decision in March of 2021. And granting. I can't explain what an amazing moment it was to get that decision, because I went to the last page at first, because the last page is what tells you what happened. And I saw granted, and I think I started screaming, crying, all kinds of emotions. I've been with this family since 2011. It's such an amazing situation. And to be able to call the family, interesting, they were calling me a little while before to talk about work permits, and now to be able to tell them that in actuality you had been granted and you're now going to be a green card holder for both parents. So the judge actually ended up saying, we're not even going to do the asylum. We're going to go straight to the more difficult standard, which is that you have established that these girls will suffer exceptional and extremely unusual hardship if they do not get the green card. Again, you can't imagine my excitement.
What did the judge say in her decision?
In the decision, the judge basically went through the procedural history, which is what we explained before, filing for the asylum application, that they were credible and consistent, even though the government attorney did feel that there may have been some fabrications, but the judge found them to be credible and consistent, just like the asylum officer did. And then jumped to the concept of the U visa, understanding that that would take a long time, but also found that to be heart-wrenching, that the daughter had to suffer such abuse. And the daughter didn't fight back when they were beating her up. And she ended up telling the police and us that she didn't fight back because she didn't want her parents to be deported because of her fighting back. And that also, I mean, the parents cried on that. So this is mentioned in the decision, and then goes on to talk about the fact that to send the parents back, who would take care of these daughters? Why should these US citizen daughters who've never been to this country go and have to probably be subject to it, that they're from a remote village? Her sister, in regards to the applicant's sister, had died from this situation. And why risk it? It was an 8-page, detailed, single-space decision going into details about how we had proven our case and that she was going to grant both mother and father cancellation of removal.
Wow, that was such a winning moment for you, surely, especially after chasing this for so long now.
Immigration is about keeping families together. It's about keeping families united. That is really ultimately, when you go back to the foundation of immigration law, is bringing families and keeping them together. You now have 2 US citizen daughters, their parents, it's just the 4 of them. I mean, the 2 daughters do extremely well in school. And in spite of this craziness that happened to one daughter, she still continued to excel in school. She left her school and ended up going to another school. They ended up moving out of the neighborhood because, I mean, this was all over on social media that these girls posted. I mean, there's a lot of suffering that happened for this family. It's a we situation because we all did it together. Like, there are documents that I need to submit, and they provided that to us. You know, they need to talk to me, and they spoke to me. They told me about the situation with their daughter. Imagine if they had not told me this. This ends up being written in the decision. And that's why it's so important for clients to really feel comfortable with their attorneys and tell their attorneys everything, because a lot of times you may think it's not significant or you may think it's not relevant, but I can use it. We together did it.
Shannon, congratulations to you on persevering and fighting as always to get the best outcome for your clients on such a difficult case.
Thank you.
So if you or someone you love need good immigration attorneys who will fight for your right to live and work legally in the United States, call Spar and Bernstein at 1-800-529-5465. Again, that's 1-800-529-5465.